Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I am excited to be here today with Lucas Mack. Lucas, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm honored.
Yeah. I'm honored to have you here. And we're going to talk about a really important topic, which is healing from past abuse or healing from past trauma. And I'll do your official bio in a moment, but you've had an intense life and a hard life. And the way I see you and know you is that you've turned out to be a stellar human being. And so, I really want to dive into what does it take to heal, and how is it that someone can go through a really challenging time, especially in young life, but later life too, and then come out on the other side and be inspired to serve and support people, as opposed to, saying fuck it, because you easily could have said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did say it at one time, and I
You did.
did, I did go through when, I survived a suicide attempt when I was 20 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
And my life after that suicide attempt was really two worlds. It was world prior to being 20 years old and living with the abuse and the confusion and the fear.
Yeah.
And then after surviving that attempt, never wanting to look back because it was so painful. And then trying to just run as
Barrel
hard
on
as I could.
forward.
Oh, and I ran so hard, almost, and to the point where I collapsed. I went to the hospital in an ambulance.
Wow.
My body shut down. I went into anaphylactic shock.
Wow.
And this was when my second child was just 5 weeks old, and
Oh.
my wife was terrified. And I just was trying to outrun the pain
Mm-hmm.
to the point where I finally got to a place where I couldn't outrun it any
Wow.
longer.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me give your official bio so people know who you are, and then we can get more into, right, what happened in those moments and how you actually came through that.
Sounds great.
So, all right, Lucas works with people who are looking for healing, forgiveness, rest, balance, purpose, and peace in their lives by reconnecting them to an understanding of the true definition of love and the power it brings, by giving them personal empowerment, a clear vision, purposeful direction, and an ability to also give back. So, growing up in an abusive home where fear and confusion ruled his life, he's been able to break the cycle and find true healing. And he's learned that love gives truth permission to come forth, resulting in personal freedom, and that the reason we aren't free is because we don't know what true love is. So Lucas leads people to experience change in themselves in order for them to impact the world through spiritual reconnection, personal healing, and legacy building.
That's right.
Amazing. So I'm looking forward to hearing too a little bit more about what true love is. But let's go back to that moment, right? You described a moment where you're trying to outrun your pain. You're trying to outrun, everything that's happened to you in the past that has shaped in large part who you are
Yeah.
in that moment. And so you end up in an ambulance with anaphylactic shock and your body shutting down, right?
Yeah.
Help us see more what's happening.
So I was working, I started a business. So my wife and I were in TV, and we're TV reporters. And then I came back to the station in Seattle, and I had this idea to start a business. And then I put like manic. Yeah, I was almost manic to a degree of how much I worked, and just my identity became wrapped in the success and the
Yeah.
failures. And then that was a roller coaster
Yeah.
because I really had no self-worth. All my self-worth was on what I could do to get approval, which never came.
Yeah.
And if it came, it was only in a way that made, my father look good. So it was never for me. I always knew it was
Yeah.
never, it was just, it was a never ending hamster wheel I could not outrun.
So painful.
And so I was working all the time, put a lot of stress on our marriage, and then we had kids, and that was a whole
That doesn't put any more stress on it.
yeah, that made things so much easier.
Yeah.
But I became, home was never a safe place, but I never really was able to put words to that. So even being home in an environment that was safe with a wife that loved me and children that loved me, I still carried the sense of home's not safe.
Danger.
Home
Yeah.
where is where I'm judged. And, we've talked, off this podcast of when the spouse attacks and then, well, what do? It just makes you shut down
Even
more.
more.
And I became really a shell where everyone outside saw me shiny,
Right.
looked good, the family, the kids, very successful entrepreneur, been on
Yeah.
TV, been a reporter, but inside I was
You were
dying.
dying
I
inside.
was physically
Yeah.
dying, and
Yeah.
I was shutting down, and it got to the place where I was drinking all the time. I was struggling with pornography. I was just anything that could soothe the pain,
Mm.
anything that could just make me feel better.
Yeah.
And my wife and I, she's incredible. She is so incredible, and she didn't know how to help me. I really, in trying to outrun the pain, projected a sense of I'm perfect. Like, what do you mean help me? Look at all the things I'm doing. I'm taking care of this family. I'm providing, like it just became
Yes.
defensive mechanisms. And when I was 34 years old,
Mm-hmm.
I started having flashbacks of the abuse first person. And I remember when I was talking to my wife and even friends after 20 years old, I had asked
Yep.
them because I was aware of my thoughts. I always had third person thoughts
Uh-huh.
from my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, and I'd ask people, do you have first person memories or third person memories of your childhood? And people are like, I don't know, I never think about it. I'm like, man, I like one time I got beat with a bullwhip and
Oh.
I could see myself being beat. I know exactly where I am.
Uh-huh.
I would
Like you
disassociate
were outside of yourself
outside my body
watching.
watching.
Yes.
And all of a sudden this one day in May, a few years ago, it was like Star Wars where they go into hyperdrive and I was back
You were
in,
there. Mm-hmm.
I was there and it made me, I could cry right now. Actually,
Yeah.
it was real.
Yeah.
It was a real thing. And, I
I'm
thought,
just so appreciating you right now for being so honest and vulnerable. And
oh,
I know this
thanks.
is what you've come to, right? That this is part
Yeah.
of the healing power, but
Yeah.
it takes a
Thanks.
lot of courage.
Thanks. And it does. What do you do? I got to this place where I went to a therapist that week. That was a Sunday night. By Thursday, I'm into a therapist. I had a
Mhm.
stigma against therapists, like, well, therapy, like that's all weakness. I was everything was prior to that moment. Tough it out, grind it out.
Yeah.
Just like literally
Ugh.
zero room for softness.
Yeah.
And deep down, I'm soft. I've always been soft. Like
Right.
I'm
I can
sure I
see
was
it
a
in your
super
eyes.
sensitive little
Feel it.
boy, like
Mhm.
but that was not allowed. And
Yeah.
so all of a sudden I'm in these flashbacks and I thought I was losing my mind. And it was a really traumatic week. It was a really confusing week
Yeah, I
too
bet.
of how am I aware of I could remember the bed being like bent over and my face is in the bed. Like
Mm.
it
Mhm.
was really bizarre.
Yeah.
And so I went into therapy and I was dealing with that. And I remember the therapist talking to me and just asking me questions and I would tell him and he was like, well, a healthy parent would do this. And
Mhm.
it was as if he inserted a rod into my brain. Like I had never even a healthy way of being was never even like my brain didn't even
Didn't
go
even
to that realm.
know.
Like I wouldn't have even known like that existed.
Yes.
And this is how, and it was affecting my parenting and my own
Mhm.
marriage. And
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, that is a help. Like that's incredible. I want that. I want to be like that. And so I was in therapy for 2 years,
Mhm.
every week, sometimes twice a week.
Mhm.
And
Which I want
I
to say, right, good for you, because there's
thank
no
you.
shame in that. I mean,
There's
that's
no shame.
sometimes what we
Oh,
need.
we have physical coaches, we have, personal trainers, we
Yeah.
have life coaches, but where's the emotional and the
Yeah.
mental trainers?
Yeah.
There's no stigma in therapy.
No.
Um, and so I was in this journey, but what I couldn't solve in therapy, and I had a lot of healing, and it was
Mhm.
beautiful.
Mhm.
And it was beautiful that it was a male therapist, where I've not ever felt safe around men.
Men. Yeah.
And which it was just beautiful how it aligned.
Yeah.
Yet I would still struggle with suicidal thoughts, and I would call it getting sniped, where, I mean, it got to the place where I was in therapy for so long that I was aware of these things, but I couldn't fix the, like,
Uh-huh.
deep
You couldn't
and
turn it off or make it
brokenness,
stop.
or yeah, like
Mhm.
something's broken inside of me. And that is where I want to get out of my body. And I'm really
Yes.
good at getting out of my mind. Like,
Right.
I'm been
That's
getting
what
out
you
of my
needed to
mind forever.
survive when you
Yeah.
were younger.
And so that, I call it getting sniped, where work would not go well, or I would feel inadequate, or whatever would trigger.
Yeah.
And it would just go into the self beat up that I'm not intelligent. I'm broken.
Mhm.
And I cause people pain. And so I need
Mhm.
to get out of me. And my buddy, who really I credit to saving my life, he was a
Wow.
10-year Navy SEAL, a medically retired SEAL. And he called me one night at a night. So I was having these flashbacks, and 2 years later, he calls me and he said, he's crying. This is the toughest man. This is a guy that led the largest
Mm.
special forces mission in the United States history. The
Wow.
guy is like, he looks like a panther. He's 6'4". He looks like G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
He's the real deal. And he called me crying and
Mm.
soft. And I had never heard him. I'm like, what the? And I was in the depth. My wife was out of town. I was with the kids, and I'm laying on the couch fighting the urge to get out of me.
Yeah.
And he calls me. And he tells me about this emotional intelligence training program that he went to, and he thought of me. And I didn't
Mhm.
talk to him in a while because I was embarrassed. I didn't talk. One of the things being in pain, and I think a lot of guys,
Right.
you don't want, it's weakness, or it's,
Right.
you're
In the
not sucking up, or
culture, you've been
yeah, you just
conditioned to think
tough
I've
it
got to
up.
do this on my own and I can't show this to anyone else.
Exactly. And that also, to back up a little bit, is also what led me to feeling like I was broken, because I had
Yeah.
read, after I was 20, I'd read the Bible 7 times cover to cover in 14 years. I had read every spiritual text that I had combed through. I would have been the most ardent Buddhist monk I needed I needed what is true, and what is
Yeah.
real, and yet I found myself, 14 years later, my buddy calling me and saying, "Hey, you should go to this emotional intelligence training."
Wow. I just love that conversation between the two of you where he's vulnerable with you and you're clearly vulnerable. You've been vulnerable with him and that like,
Yeah.
oh, thank God for that.
Truly,
Yeah.
truly thank God for that. And the other thing is, I have never talked to someone so long on the phone in my life. Not my wife when we were dating, never a girlfriend. We talked for 2.5 hours on the phone,
Wow.
and crying and processing. And so I went to this training, and truly, not everyone has to go to a training, but what I
Yeah.
learned, and not even really what they taught, it was just what I experienced. It was the very first time I was ever around people I didn't know, strangers,
Mm-hmm.
that showed me unconditional love.
Mm,
I could have said anything and they would have been, I mean, the therapist was close to that, but
yeah.
not not fully. I felt like, they're taking notes, and like, there's
Right.
still
This is
there's
more
still
like a human to
warmth to it.
human.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's still like therapist patient, or whatever they
Yeah.
call it, client. But this was the first time where I felt safe enough to go there. And part of the theme is the only way out is through. So
Yes.
you cannot outrun. They're talking about you cannot outrun, and I'm like,
And here you are like, oh,
yeah,
I've been trying so hard to outrun
so
this.
hard. So
Yes.
I thought, if I was more articulate, if I knew more, if I read more,
Right.
if I knew the Bible, if I prayed more, I
Oh,
fasted from 20 to 25 years old every Monday, 24 hours straight
you
every Monday.
fasted.
fasted.
Wow.
I prayed. I'd pray for 2 hours a day. I'd go out into fields. I mean, I was trying to like fix something
Wow. Which
deeply.
is, I just want, to say for the listener, right? It's like, right, you can try all of these things to be better and better and more intelligent and more articulate and more this and more that, right? And that's where it just starts to, the crank gets tighter and tighter and tighter.
Yes. Yes. Truly, it's like a noose, and it's just the more you strive for
Yes.
something that you truly want, it's like the noose gets a little tighter and
Yeah.
tighter. And I really have a lot of compassion for men and women, but specifically men who that noose is around their neck tightly right now.
Yes.
And a lot of dads are killing themselves right now. There's the
Yeah.
suicide rate's the highest it's ever been.
Astronomical.
Adult, veterans, it's
Yeah.
because we are lacking love. And so, you read my bio it was the very first time I experienced true love,
Yeah.
unconditional
Say more about
love.
that. Like what, so is true love unconditional love, or what,
Always.
how do
There's no
you,
such thing as unconditional love. Love is always unconditional. And
mm,
we have placed narrative around this word of love
yeah.
and bastardized its true meaning, where it means nothing more than to say something's sick when we mean it's cool, or
Mm.
something's cool when we think it's neat, or something's neat when we actually like it.
Okay,
And
wait, help me understand that. So you're saying the bastardization of love is what?
using the word in a form, taking the word and applying it to a different meaning. So
Got it.
you could say, oh, that's sick. I don't know if you talk like that, and I don't
Right.
talk like that, but I hear people say, oh, that's sick, and they mean it's cool.
Oh, they mean it's
And
cool.
even saying the word cool,
Mm-hmm.
they mean they like it.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh. We're
we're
getting like
that's
more and more distant.
correct. So
Yes.
it's like, I love milkshakes, I love sunshine, I love my wife, I love my kids. And the Greeks tried to solve this conundrum, and they, I think, were the real cause of this confusion, because then they said, well, there's the concept of love, and
Yeah.
that is always unconditional, that's always giving.
Yes.
However, we can't always be unconditional. So how I apply love to my brother is the eros, and or agape or
Agape,
philebe,
Brandon, the
phileo,
romantic
or,
partner.
all those different applications. And I think that's where the breakdown happens, is that
Mm.
love means, in Hebrew, the word love is ahava, which means to give.
Huh.
So when does love stop loving?
Right. Right.
It
Love
never
is
stops.
always loving. It never stops.
Love is, it always,
Yes.
it is
And then we
always.
humanize it and twist it. I mean, and I
Exactly.
remember getting divorced, and actually after that just being like, I am on a quest to understand what actually is love, right? It took me
Mm,
many years to be able to say to someone in a romantic way, I love you, or I'm in love with you, because I was like, I don't actually know what love is anymore. I thought I had all these ideas of what love is, but what is love actually? And so I
yeah.
can relate to this, really trying to deeply understand, okay, what is love? And then what are we doing to it in human ways that does kind of bastardize it or kills it?
It really does kill it. And especially from the purest form of love that we should know is from parent to child.
Mm,
And there you go. There's the answer why we don't know love.
mm,
It's because these generational, I call it curses, even though that might seem like a biblical narrative, but I pulled that from it. We are cursing the next generation, dooming them
as we're
as
acting.
we're living. And we
Right.
are, so a child, a innocent being, as a puppy or a kitten or a baby animal, if you saw people treat baby animals like we treat our children, we would go out and hang. I mean, we would lynch these people.
Yeah.
We verbally, not truly, but you see what I'm saying? Like
Right.
there would be
We
such
would
an
be
outcry.
appalled and we wouldn't let it happen. And
We would stop it.
yeah.
But all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's
It becomes
children. Like,
private in
it
someone's
becomes
home and we feel like we can't
totally,
interfere, right? All of those things.
and truly it is, because it's funny now you just triggered this. I mean, yes, it is private. Homes are private. I don't know why it just triggered me. Like, yeah, I'm a libertarian. I love like privatization. I love all those things. And yet
Mm-hmm.
if there's ever duality, then it's all inauthentic and it's
Mm,
all a lie. And
mm,
lies cannot bring freedom. Only truth brings freedom. And
yeah.
so love is the only means by which truth will come forth.
Mm,
And I talk to everyone, is truth is like a groundhog,
yeah.
and it has to breathe. It's a mammal. It needs air. It wants to come get light. But the minute it sniffs, it looks around, and if it sniffs judgment in any form, it will
Yeah.
burrow down even deeper than it
Yeah.
was before, to the point where that truth might have died deep down, where people don't know the truth. I mean, it's,
Right.
I
Even
do think
in
we can,
themselves, right?
they
Like,
don't know it in themselves.
yeah.
And so love, unconditional love, allows truth to come forth,
Mm,
resulting in our freedom. And this is my mission in life, is to help people understand that judgment only is enslaving. It
yeah.
only enslaves. And I am an abolitionist of the soul. I want people, I don't think this world
Powerful.
any more macho men. The macho men days are over.
Over.
They're over. What we need is more courageous liberators of souls,
Mm,
men and women willing to stare fear and shame and guilt and judgment in the face, in the
yeah.
eyes, and say, no, no,
Yeah.
thank
Well,
you.
and this is amazing because one of the things I often see working with men is that there's a kind of courage of like, I'm going to go jump off a mountain and heli-ski, or I'm going to go whitewater
Yeah,
kayaking, or I'm going to,
yeah,
climb Mount Everest. And yet the courage to express love or
yes,
to say, I feel hurt, and the vulnerability, like that seems to stop people, you know?
yes, yes.
So I'm curious for you, how do you work with a man in that way to help him actually be able to have the courage in that way? Or how did you find the courage to be vulnerable and to be loving in those moments?
The first, the first step when I work with men is, there's nothing that they can say to tell them. Literally, there's nothing anyone could say that I will judge them.
Oh,
I've heard it all.
yeah.
I've experienced quite a lot. There's
Yeah.
what, okay, and how are we
Right.
going
And
to
that
get
doesn't
healed?
make you unlovable. And that doesn't
Exactly.
make you
Okay,
bad. And
and
that doesn't.
exactly. Okay, and how are we moving forward? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, say it. And here's what I think, why one of the things that the talks that I give, every mother drops down the X chromosome.
Hmm.
Every human actually starts in the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
Take that, macho man. You actually started as a receiver
Uh-huh.
before the father came, and by no choice of their own, either gave an X chromosome, which created a female,
Mm-hmm.
or a Y chromosome, which created a male.
Mm-hmm.
However, the very basic function of our origin is to receive.
Uh,
And so I believe men, the job of a male is
yes.
to be a protector of all humanity,
Mm.
to receive love. So we
Mm.
need strong men, but
Yes.
strong men with purpose of protecting and being the safest person in a room,
Yeah.
not a person that's strong and looked at as a possible threat in a room.
Yeah. Well, and interesting, I just love your take on receiving too, because I feel very strongly that men need to learn to receive. Most men need to learn to receive a lot more than they're receiving. And in some ways in the culture right now, people are, confused by that statement, like what, men are getting things that they, and men are attacking or abusing or all these things. And I think part of that comes from a lack of receiving and a lack of feeling nourished and full. And so then there comes, I'm going to go manipulate or take. So I love that you have your attention on receiving, especially for men.
It's so important. And I mean, I had a grandfather who, when I was very young, would try to hug him, and he would stick his fist in my chest and push me away,
Ooh.
and wouldn't allow me ever to hug him. And
Mm.
he would squeeze the soft of my hand in between my index finger and my thumb and try to hurt me and laugh about it. And
Wow.
even in that really affected my view of like, now looking back, that's a broken human.
Yeah.
That's a
It's a,
broken
right, a
human
hurt, wounded human
that won't accept a hug, won't receive a hug from a
from
child.
a child. Right.
And then what happens is when we're hurt,
Mm-hmm.
all we can do is
Yeah.
hurt
Others.
ourselves.
Hurt
And
ourselves and hurt others. Right.
a hurt person cannot heal another,
Right.
and a healed person cannot hurt another. So my
Mm.
mission is to see the hurting get healed and the healed go out and heal others. And
Beautiful.
healing is, once I experience healing, I wouldn't trade it for anything in
Mm.
the world. I would not trade it. There's nothing the
Mm.
world can offer me.
That's more important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in exchange for my healing.
I mean, I just love how much hope to me I'm hearing you bring, right? For anyone who's hurting, that there is hope and that you can transform and change and, be loved. And whatever those places that you may feel of shame or embarrassment or there's something wrong with me, right? That can change and that can heal. And then it's not true. It's like part of what I hear you saying and what I know in myself is those voices are not true. Any of the voices in our heads that are saying anything critical about us, they're not real. They're just, a survival mechanism that happened when we were young.
Keep us safe.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. The ego is so fascinating because it is trying to keep that child safe.
Safe.
And then we outgrow that first moment of trauma.
Yeah.
And then if we are still ruled by the ego,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to acknowledging the ego, and this is what I learned in the training that I went to, was, okay, thank you. I hear you.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
I'm choosing. I'm
Right.
going forth. I am free. I am loved. And one of the things I have guys do is write down affirmations and say them every single day and put them right by their
Mm.
bed. So I have 5
Yeah. What
words.
are yours?
I have two sayings: that I am a loving, kind, and powerful leader. I'm a
Mm.
loving, kind, and powerful leader. I'm a loving, kind, and powerful leader. I'm a loving, kind, and powerful leader. And then there are 5 words by my bed, which are really dealing with my ego and telling the ego it's okay. And it is, I am safe,
Mm-hmm.
I am loved, I am free, I am abundant, I am powerful. Those are the
Yeah.
5 things that I needed to
To
know as a
know and to hear.
child, to hear. And I needed to know now as a 37-year-old father of 3, married 13 years, I
Yeah.
still need to know I am safe, I am
Yeah.
loved, I am free, I'm abundant, I am powerful. And because I used to not trust a soul. That was one of the things that
Right.
going down to this leadership training, I didn't trust anyone
Right. Well,
because
why would you have when that was your template, right? People were not
exactly
trustworthy. The people who were supposed to help you grow and care for you and love you were the ones who were hurting you.
right.
Yeah.
And then I became a really good stone thrower. There, that there, Jesus said he was without sin cast the first stone and everyone
Uh,
walks away. I became a really good stone thrower because I was hurt.
yeah.
So I was hurting other people.
Yeah.
And I joke around that I became like the movie Elf. If you've seen Elf and they're having that snowball fight and that last guy's running away in Central Park and he like drills him from like a mile away or something. It's just totally ridiculous. But I became,
But you could see and you would just,
yeah, because I'm trying to justify this, I'm grinding it out. Why, how can you not grind
why
it
are
out?
you not?
Why are you not? But really, I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm thinking I'm gonna have a heart attack. I would sit in my office sweating, just sweating like I'm gonna die any second.
Whew.
And thankfully I didn't. And thankfully
I'm
I
very
found
grateful that you
life.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I just am amazed, right? It's like, not only did you not die, you also are deeply committed to your own healing and others' healing and to, truth and love. And it's really inspiring.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I want to see the world. The world that I want to live in is possible.
Mm-hmm.
It is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a world where people treat people like people,
Yeah.
to treat them as a full functioning human being, that treat them in a way that they would want to be treated themselves
Mm,
always.
yeah.
And Hillel the elder, the great rabbi Hillel the elder said, that which you deem hateful unto yourself, do not do unto another.
Huh.
This is the whole essence of Torah. The
Wow.
rest is commentary. Now go
Mm.
and like, this is
Mm.
the whole essence of it. That which you deem hateful, don't do unto another
Don't do
person.
that to others.
And then Jesus came and said, love, do unto others. Like the opposite is don't become an isolationist.
Yeah.
Also go out into the world and love people, but do unto them as you would want them to do unto you. And I think finding that balance. I
Yeah.
had a rabbi, one of my friends is a rabbi, and he asked me one time, he said, have you ever seen a bird fly with one wing?
Hmm.
I'm like, no, I haven't. I was like, no,
Interesting
that's really
question.
good. Yeah, okay, game on. I like this. And I said, no. He said, exactly. He said, it takes both wings to create tension, and in
Huh.
that tension creates the lift.
Mm.
So we need the not doing and the doing. We need the femininity and the masculinity. We need
Yeah.
the vulnerability and the hero side of ourselves. We need both in balance
Mm.
so that we can rise and lift together as
I love that. I love that. What would you say to men who, I don't know. I just started thinking about how there's two sides of this. Like a man who's going through something like you, who feels like he's dying inside, and um, and in a way it's coming from the internal, right? Like from your past experience. And then there are men who, and maybe this is the same man, you can tell me, who get stuck in dynamics that are coming from the outside, where their boss is treating them a certain way, or their partner's treating them a certain way, or their kids are treating them a certain way. And so it's showing up in the moment, and he's like, feeling fucked, for lack of a better word, right? Like, I can't get out of this, and it's everywhere, or it's in these big dynamics. And how do you work with men who are experiencing some of those things in the moment, in the now?
both sides, those that I truly understand the internal struggle and the internal death, and then the external circumstance that just seems to beat someone down and paralyze them.
Yeah.
Both, all of us, it all is an internal. It all starts from within.
Mm.
If we are leading ourselves,
Yeah.
we can lead others no matter what circumstance. And so we have to go back to the place of, when was the first time that this way of being that we are exhibiting to the world, when did this first start? Who told you to be quiet when you had something to say?
Right. Who
turned
told
it-
you to be quiet when someone else was yelling at you or shaming you or not
exactly
standing up for
exactly
you?
who intimidated you, like sit down, and like you sat down, and then that stayed with you, because if you got up, worse things would happen.
Yes.
Well, whenever that happened, at whatever age, and it doesn't have to be that guys are all in abusive homes. It could be they wanted to be loved and there was just a void of love. So then they don't know how to, it can be both sides, but wherever someone is, it starts from the inside.
Mm.
It starts internally. So
Yes.
why does your boss, now there are terrible people in the world, I'm not denying that, but why does your boss, like, what's the way of being that you're creating that allows your boss to think that he can talk to you
like that?
Yeah. Because I knew I attracted abusive men in my life.
You did.
I was just attracting them like a magnet. It was like, because that was my way of being, like, I'm not worthy, I need help, like I'm just this like nothing, powerless. And these guys that love that power were just coming in my business.
And they don't even necessarily know it. It's not conscious. They're just
totally. It's just
we're just
my position.
drawn
It's
to each other.
Yeah, exactly. And it was when I shifted, it was like, wow, I am a loving, kind, and powerful leader. I mean, these are the affirmations that and everything has changed. And I will say this, I don't like proverbial sayings. I don't like the surfacey, like pat on the back, like bumper sticker slogans.
Yeah.
So I'm qualifying what I'm about to say, because it's not that.
Okay.
But it could be interpreted to some, if they don't really understand where I'm coming from, is the life that you really want, the dream that intrinsically was given to you as a gift from your very inception, is possible on the other side of fear,
Mm.
is possible on the other side of your healing. And
Mm.
let me say from example, not to say, oh, look at me, but I can
No,
tell you
no, from you
I
that you actually did
know
this. Yeah.
my marriage radically changed. My children, my home life, finances, like everything
Has
changed.
changed.
And I wrote the other day, if you strive for love, love will always flee. If you strive for peace, peace will always flee. If you
Uh-huh.
strive for joy, joy will always flee. They wait for you
To
to
stop
just finally
striving.
surrender. Yeah.
Right. And okay, and so you brought up fear.
Mm,
So let's just go into that a little bit too. You said, it's on the other side of fear, or when you face your fear,
yes.
that's when what happens? What happened for you?
Well, I had to go back as a 36-year-old man. I had to go back as a 4-year-old in that moment. And I had
Uh-huh.
to speak to the abuser
Yeah.
as myself now, but giving
Right.
voice to that
To
child.
that child, right?
And
And
I
face the
went there,
fear that you
turned.
never.
I remember turning. I physically like turned and looked and said, you know, in ways that are not necessarily appropriate for this podcast, but
Yeah.
do not touch me.
Yes.
Do not touch me.
Yeah.
Do not touch me. And I was screaming it as like, don't lay a fucking finger on
Fucking
me. Don't
finger. Yeah.
come near me.
Yes. Yes.
And that was the very first, like this massive volcanic shift inside me where I was no longer afraid to go to the most painful place. And once I was
Right.
at the most painful place, then it was just degrees of healing along the way. It wasn't
Right.
going less, a little more painful, a little more painful. Let's, because that's a progression that we may never get to,
Yeah.
but the jump to the most painful.
The most painful parts, right? And in that, and I've walked people through a process like that too, right? Where then in that you actually find your voice and your
Yes.
strength and your courage and all the
Oh,
parts of you that, were kind of sitting down and taking it quietly
yes.
are then back online.
I mean, before that, before going through that emotional intelligence program, I had written a published book. But it didn't do that well. But my Instagram was private. I was just on lockdown. Like,
Yeah.
and then I found, like you said, I found my voice, and all of a sudden, oh, this is who I'm actually supposed to be. This is what I've always
Yes.
known. Like, I do love people, and
Mm.
on my website, I talk about spiritual connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I joke around with people because you never hear the person that says, oh, I'm not spiritual, I'm religious. And that always makes me laugh. Like, I'm not spiritual, I'm religious.
Right.
And people are always saying, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And both are, religion's a modality, it's a methodology to know a realm outside of one's physical existence, as philosophy is a methodology to understand the physical existence and that which is. So there's just different methodologies, but the spiritual side of us, I think, is incredibly important. I ask men, when was the first time, men and women, but I work with men, when was the first time you stopped believing in an all-knowing being?
Mm.
If you were raised in a home that had Santa Claus, the very first time you were told an all-knowing being who loved you,
Mm.
who gave you good things, was a lie, do you think that just didn't affect you? Like, oh,
Oh,
okay,
cool.
no
Sure.
problem. What other
Yeah.
all-knowing beings are good out there? And so this is also a great, I believe we all are made to receive spiritually, like the good that is,
Mm.
whether call it universe, source, but all that is good. The
Yeah.
garden life, I heard this old rabbi speak, actually the founder of Chabad said, life is still a garden.
Huh.
It's our job just to dig it out and bring out the good. It's still good.
Even
The
when
world
it's
is
messy
still
or
good.
even when
Even
things
when
are
it's
dying,
messy,
right? It's
even the
like,
pain, it's still good.
huh.
And how would we not know good unless we first knew that which was bad? How would I know healing if I didn't know pain? How would I know love if I first didn't know the depths of fear?
Uh,
And
yeah.
oh,
I love, right, the contrast and the paradox that, more the older I get, the more I'm seeing it. I think you saw it from a very young age, and
mm,
many people do have that trauma and abuse at such a young age, and it's hard to digest the fact that, right, we have to sometimes experience the darkness in order to know the light, and have to
yes,
experience the being trapped in order to know the freedom. But I just feel how much hope that also gives, of like, all right, if I'm feeling that darkness right now, it's because I'm recognizing the absence of light, or the absence of
yes,
something
it's an
good.
absence of,
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Because we've never opened a closet door and braced for darkness to spill out. No,
Huh.
we know the laws of the universe. Wherever there's light, darkness goes away.
Yeah.
And wherever there's darkness, there's an absence of light.
Yeah.
And it's the same with fear. Wherever there's fear, there's an absence of love. But wherever
Mm.
love goes, fear goes away.
Fear goes away.
It
Oh,
is,
beautiful.
they cannot coexist together.
Mm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. No, thank you for this. And thank you for just the courageous journey you've been on your whole life, and for being willing to face those deepest, darkest fears and come to the surface with the gold of, wow,
Mm.
I can love people. I can make space for whatever anybody brings to me. And I feel, really, really grateful that you're out here as a lover. And what did you call it? We need
Uh,
soulful liberators,
courageous
courageous
liberators of
liberators
soul.
of the soul.
Yeah.
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 Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me on. I'm honored.
Yeah. No, I feel honored to have you. Any last thing? What do you want to leave men with?
Solomon wrote, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick."
Mm.
The sickness and the depression, the angst, the noose that you feel around your neck is a lack of knowing there's hope. And I want everyone to know that there is hope, and it 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 can be okay when we choose for it to be okay.
Mm. Thank you. And thank you for being a living example of that, right? I know you're not talking about this theoretically, you've lived it. So
Yes.
that hope feels even more palpable because of that.
Thanks.
Thank you.